Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group. We're located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And my friends, today we're talking about Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago, the FBI raid, the invasion in Florida that took place. And there's been a lot of development over the weekend. And so, as usual, let's go to the mind map to get our bearing straight, to get an outline on what we're going to be diving into today. You can see here the thumbnail seized. Now, before we started the show, that was kind of the big headline. Literally like an hour ago, maybe even less than that, maybe 30 minutes ago, the DOJ came out. They filed a new motion, and they are objecting to Donald Trump and the warrants being released. And so we're going to actually start there today. I was going to save the docket update for the end of today, but we're going to start here today. And thank you, General Kale, for the super chat. We'll hit that in a minute. But we're going to start with the DOJ objecting to the warrant being released. They filed a 13-page motion. We're going to take a look at that. We're actually going to start with the docket. We're going to remind ourselves that Donald Trump has two lawyers, but we haven't really seen a lot of activity from them yet. A lot of this stuff is being communicated about behind the scenes. And so we'll sort of bounce around a little bit on the docket because there was a lot of activity over the weekend, and it's worth catching up there. And then some of the red meat stuff that happened over the weekend. Donald Trump on True Social posted a bunch of stuff. I mean, he was really sort of on a tear this weekend. And one of the things that came out, also confirmed by Fox News, was, or, according to Donald Trump's claims, they're saying, right, he's alleging that they were privileged documents that were seized in the raid. So we'll take a look at that story. The records, of course, boxes and bins and barrels and everything that they were just hauling on out of there. And apparently some of that stuff was actually privileged. And we talked about that on our morning walk and talk this morning. But apparently Donald Trump also sent a message over to Merrick Garland saying something like, "The country is on fire. The country is on fire. What can I do to reduce the heat?" And there was some conversation from many people, in the media saying that maybe this is a plea, like this is a cry for help. He wants to negotiate with Merrick Garland or something like that. And I didn't read it that way, but apparently he said that. And, I sort of thought it was sort of like a position of strength. It's like, hey, you just slipped in it. You just stepped in it. How can I help you clean some of this stuff up? Right. That was sort of my take on it, but we'll see what you have to say about it. We also had some conversation, or we have to get to some conversation about confidentiality, and Donald Trump and his lawyers and Kash Patel, former national security advisor, he was saying that Donald Trump really has the ultimate declassification authority, and Kash Patel, is, my understanding, is a former national security prosecutor. Right, we're going to listen to him. He'll explain his background, but obviously somebody in the Trump administration, somebody who's on Team Trump, and he is kind of saying that this whole thing is much ado about nothing. There's also a conversation about the standing orders on declassification. And so we'll get into all of that. And then if you haven't heard this song yet, there is the old Comey song. And, we're going to definitely have to replay this one. I think the original source on this was from back when it all happened. I don't remember. But we're going to have to play the Comey song because we saw Comey come out and excuse Hillary Clinton deleting a bunch of emails, and a lot of people are seeming to forget that and kind of dump that right into the dustbin of history. And so it's appropriate to, I think, pull that one out. So a lot of updates there. Now, while all of this is going on, we've been following around the sort of forthcoming wave of Republicans who are going to be very likely taking storm in the House very soon. We're going to be following the Liz Cheney. She's got her primary tomorrow. And that's going to be fun. We're going to have a going away party for her probably tomorrow. I think we'll see what that looks like, but she should be going away tomorrow. And that's the primary that's taking place in Wyoming. And so my point is they're all going to be replaced by people like Marjorie Taylor Green and, she's already in Congress. But my point is, right, all of these squishy Republicans are going to be, replaced by a, let's say a more pro-American breed. Can I be so so contentious? Here, Marjorie Taylor Green, she came out and she filed articles of impeachment against Merrick Garland. And so we're going to go through those very short. as articles of impeachment are. We actually wrote our own articles of impeachment for, like, I think it was definitely for Kamala Harris. We might have written them for several people. When they impeached Trump the second time, they actually brought out the articles of impeachment. And, as a criminal defense attorney, I'm thinking, well, you need more than that. Like, an indictment has at least, some substance to it. That's all you need in order to indict a president. That's it. These articles of impeachment. And so they are really actually pretty, like, bland, benign. You can actually impeach anybody in 5 pages. Super easy. So we'll read through that. Marjorie Taylor Green has that has been submitted, and she made a statement about it. And then when I was coming across this, sort of looking at, the new wave of Congress people who are going to be really bringing it to the Democrats. We talk about the pendulum swinging both ways, right? If they're going to be acting the way they're acting with the FBI and other federal agencies, when the Republicans seize the levers of power, well, they can just exercise them in the same way that the Democrats have. And so we're paying attention to what they're saying they're going to do. And here is, we've got a clip of Lauren Boebert. We'll get to her later. And I'm not sure about this, but I think she actually calls Fox News liberal trash to Laura Ingraham's face. I'm pretty sure. I listened to it like 3 times, and I might have been missing context or something, but literally she's like, Laura Ingraham's like, hey, welcome to the show. And Laura Boebert's like, hey, it's good to be here on this disgusting liberal network. and then Laura just asks her a question, and they just move on right by it. So we'll get there. Big headlines over from Kari Lake in Arizona. Kari Lake, I don't know if you're paying attention to this race in Arizona. Obviously, I am in Arizona. And Kari Lake is capturing a lot of eyeballs. She actually made the argument. We'll take a listen to this. She was on a Charlie Kirk show. And so we'll just listen to a snippet of it. He's next door on YouTube, right on that channel, right next door, right over there. Just go check him out. And they had her on, and she was saying that this is going to be the most important race in the country because of, if another border state falls, like it goes California, New Mexico, what happens if it goes Arizona and then Texas? It's over, man. It's over. Game over. So very important race taking place here in Arizona. And Kari Lake also was making some headlines when she said that Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump have BDE. Do you know what that means? Yeah, I had to think about it for a minute. And it means, well, we'll save it, I guess, for the segment and when we unpack all of that. But Ron DeSantis was out on displaying some of that BDE when he was out there at a Turning Point conference. And so we'll check in on that. And as you can see, we've just got a lot to attend to. And so there's just a whole bunch of news to get to. And so without any further ado, I want to invite you to be a part of the program. And if you want to join us, please head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an amazing chat over there. We've got Savvy Sue, John McGarvey, Radice's in the house. Shout out to Tweak. Matt's mom is here. We've got JC the Music Man, and Miriam is in the house. Good to see you, Miriam. Haven't seen you in a while. Facts Matter. Phil in Flyover Country's over there. Marvelistic Me, and many others. I'm seeing some of those super chats come in. Thank you very much, my YouTube friends, and shout out to our YouTube members. We've got Mads, Shane Souza. We've got Holy F, my S stinks. Curtis Bartles in the house. Mods playing hooky. Geo's in the house. Geomancy Games. Subscribe on YouTube. He's right next door as well. You can go check him out. And you can join us or subscribe. And then finally, thank you for referring anybody that you happen to know who's been charged with a crime in the state of Arizona over to our law firm. I'm a criminal defense attorney. We have a mission of helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases. Any type of offense in Arizona, that's what we do. Free case evaluations. Get a copy of my book, 480-787-0394. We're very passionate about the work that we do, and so we're grateful for you giving us the opportunity to help. All right, and so as I said, without any further ado, there was a little bit of a change up in the program today because I was going to start with Trump's passport being seized. But because the DOJ, likes to screw with my show prep, they file a motion right before showtime. And so we're going to have to just, change gears a little bit. But that's okay because this is good stuff. In a new filing, the Department of Justice is indicating that they do not want the warrant unsealed. Now, there's been a little bit of a conversation about this. Merrick Garland came out and he said that Donald Trump made the warrant public or wanted it to be public. And so then they were okay unsealing a portion of the warrant, but we never actually saw the affidavit. We talked previously about the contents, the inventory list, and sort of the cover sheets of the warrant. Not a lot there, but we wanted that affidavit. And so We are going to take a look at the actual response that the U.S. government filed. You can see it's response to the motion to unseal. It is a 13-page document. It's filed on 8/15 out of the Southern District of Florida. And so I do want to spend some time going through this entire document. But before we do, because this is referencing other things, it's referencing other motions that have been previously filed by a bunch of the media companies, I want to make sure we just get a quick pause and take a look at the court docket. All right, so now this is over from the federal court docket. This is, this is sort of I log into this and you can see, this is all part of the public record, but this is what I see when I log in. You can see that we've got the defendant. We still don't know who that is specifically, but we do know it's Judge Bruce Reinert. We also see here, now this was interesting, it's represented by Andrea Flynn Mogensen. Now some people are going to be seeing her name pop up, but she is not representing Donald Trump. She's representing an agency, an entity called Florida Council for Government, something or other. I have it in the mind map. But just so you see that there, right, Donald Trump's lawyers really haven't made an official appearance sort of on this docket yet. We see that the U.S. government is represented by Juan Antonio Gonzalez, all out of Miami, Florida, and all of this, is there. Now, the original sealed warrant was issued on 8/5. The raid took place on 8/8. We had a bunch of the follow-up docket entries that we had reviewed previously. But I want to scroll all the way down just so you can see all of the activity that sort of took place literally today on the 15th. So on Friday, we talked for several minutes about several of these motions. And a lot of this, even though it's a lot of stuff, a lot of it is very, very similar stuff, all similarly related. Motions to intervene. All the media companies are skidding in here. They're all slamming into the front of the building. You got the New York Times here, CBS here. We've got EW Scripps Company. This is, Dow Jones and Company. We've got Times Publishing Company. It's all the media companies. We talked all about that. Now, then we get lawyers are appearing. And so a notice of appearance is a formal entry by an attorney. So this woman, as I said, you saw her up at the very top on the docket, Andrea Flynn Mogensen. She's on behalf of the Florida Center for Government Accountability. So she's sort of on the case as the defendant, but she's not really the defendant. So we are going to see who Trump's lawyers are here in a minute, or at least who the government prosecutors are communicating with. And so last week on Friday, we talked about the order to unseal, right? The motion to unseal, and the docket entry was unsealed, and we covered that on Friday. But then over the weekend and on Monday, we saw sort of a lot of activity. So first of all, we've got these 3 entries on 8/15, all sort of bad entries, erroneous entries from the court clerk. We've got several additional motions to intervene. Okay, this one comes from Dow Jones, so we're going to write that one off. Media company, ABC News, right? Write them off. Managing editor, Albany Times Union. They want this unsealed. As I said, media, they're just crashing into this place. We have somebody named Paul Dorsey wants a motion to intervene and wants to see, to see the warrant. Another person. Same thing here. Somebody from Andy Martin, right? Filed 2 different documents here. We've got privated entries. So all of this is restricted and sealed. Can't see what's going on there. But then we see this one, paperless order denying. This came out from the judge. And so the judge is sort of batching all of those requests, all of those motions to intervene, and all of those, all of those people are skidding into the front of the court building. Can I see what's going on in here? And the judge is saying, listen, no, all of you don't need to see this. The interests that are asserted by all of you people are already being represented by the media. Okay, so in other words, you only need access to like a couple things. A couple people need access. Not every single person needs direct access. He's saying, no, all of these 10 media companies are getting access, so you don't need it too, so take it easy. So we're going to see some of that, right? Why is this important? Is because the government has to balance these competing interests. The government has to say, oh my goodness, right? We've got these national security interests. We've got these very sacred things that we have to keep close to our chest. Otherwise, America might be doomed. Whereas the media is saying, hey, wait, hold on a minute. This is public record. This is the president, former president. He might run again. He's probably going to win. Joe Biden doesn't even know where he is. So we need to see what the heck is going on here. We have a very compelling public interest in this case. And so what's the court going to do? They've got to balance these two things out. And so I just wanted to spend a moment on that to show you, almost this entire docket is media stuff. Literally, it's media, lawyers, You can just see it here. CBS, Dow, Time Publishing Company, EW Scripps, almost the entire docket is the media. So now what we see at the very end on 8:15, and let me get rid of myself right here, is this. Docket entry 59, response to the motion by the United States as to the sealed search warrant, motion number 54. This motion, a motion to open a search warrant affidavit and other documents filed by Andy Martin. Okay, so this person is sort of a third party. He's not, a party, limited party of interest. He's saying, I want some of this opened and I want to see it. Now, what we had talked about previously, or sort of the implication that we got from Merrick Garland last week, was that he was sort of okay with some of this stuff. Oh, Donald Trump made it public, and so we're going to let all of this stuff open, and so therefore they're not opposing to it. In fact, they filed the motion originally to unseal it, right? The government came out and they said, hey, we talked to Trump's lawyers, and we've decided that we are okay unsealing this. This is from that entry. They actually filed this. Let me see if I can zoom in on this just for a minute. Here, they filed this entry previously. When Donald Trump said, show the warrant, Merrick Garland came out and said, now that Donald Trump told you all about this, I'm okay showing the warrant. And they said, in accordance, this is coming from the U.S. prosecutors, right? They filed this. They say, hey, Judge, in accordance with the court's order directing the government, us, the DOJ, to confer with counsel, we did that. Counsel for former President Trump, Evan Corcoran, who we are very familiar with, and James Trusty, they've informed the government that the former president does not object to the motion to unseal the limited warrant materials. Therefore, U.S. requests the court grant its motion and unseal docket entry number 17. Okay, that came from the government. Like, the government prosecutors filed that. They said, Judge, yeah, we're good unsealing this. And Merrick Garland kind of came out with a lot of bravado, right? Sort of, the idea, oh, well, Donald Trump was the person who publicized all of this. We just wanted to raid him, without anybody knowing about it, because we sort of know that we're bad puppies. When your puppy or your dog sort of knows, what happened to the couch? Your dog's like, oh gosh, they just sort of walk out of there. And they take care of the couch when you're not watching, just like what Merrick Garland did, because he knew he was going to go in there and probably chew on Trump's couch, really. And so they have to now, sort of balance all of these interests. And the DOJ has seemingly proffered that they don't care if it becomes public. But now we fast forward and you see, according to the docket, that they don't want this thing to come out. So they are now opposing the opening of the warrant. So the motion to open the search warrant affidavit that was filed previously in docket entry 54, they're filing a response, and now we can take a look at it. 13 pages. The United States' omnibus response to the motions to unseal. And an omnibus motion is sort of, it's consolidating a bunch of motions into one response. Okay, so rather than the United States government responding to CBS and to Times and to the, Washington Post and everybody else who's in there, they're just going to say, here's our response to everybody. This is our omnibus. We're going to consolidate the response. And the judge said, that's no problem at all. You can do that. So here it is. They say, all right, Judge, look, here's our response to all of these media people. On August 8th, DOJ executed a search warrant at a location in Florida, property of former President Trump. Given the circumstances presented in this matter and the public interest in transparency, and in the wake of the former president's public confirmation of the search, right? Trump told you about it. And his representatives' public characterizations of the materials sought, right? They opened the seal. After they did that, the government moved to unseal the search warrant, its attachments, and the property receipts summarizing the material seized, which the court granted, which we talked about last week. And I just showed you their confirmation to the court that they spoke with Trump's lawyers and they're in agreement on this thing. They both want to unseal it. Prosecutor says here, those docketed items, which had already been provided to the former president's counsel upon execution of the warrant, have now appropriately been made public. We saw the inventories. Box A21, A37, whatever. Nothing that we could really glean from that. The affidavit, right? Okay, and remember this was the limited release of the materials. And this is why even when they were sort of debating about this, we were sitting here going, so what? We're going to see a cover sheet? Who cares? They're now saying, the government, the affidavit supporting the search warrant presents a very different set of considerations. Oh, here we go. So, right, what they're saying is you get the cover sheet and you get the inventory list, but you don't get the affidavit. Well, that's not the same sort of posture that they had previously when they said Donald Trump wanted this exposed. They said, well, he told you about it. I mean, we tried to do this like a shamed puppy, but he made it public. Prosecutor says, now we can't release the affidavit. Why? Very different set of circumstances. Not that different. It's like the next page. Cover sheet, inventory, affidavit. It's like in the same binder. There remain compelling reasons, including to protect the integrity of an ongoing law enforcement investigation that implicates national security, that support keeping the affidavit sealed. Footnote 1. Whoa! 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 So they're now saying that those are, I mean, these are documents related to literally an ongoing law enforcement investigation that implicates national security. So those must be active nuclear codes or something like national. I don't know. I mean, those were boxes that were sitting in Trump's closet for years. What's in there? I don't know. I don't know. But apparently they were okay in there. And Donald Trump's team got a message from the National Archives. They said, hey, why don't you increase your lock on there? And the Trump's people said, yeah, no problem. Well, what do you want, a kryptonite lock? Sure. You want a U-lock? Yeah, I'll get one. No problem. So they got it. So they just left it sitting there, but now they had to go in there immediately. They were okay with you knowing that there are boxes that they took, but not the affidavit that justified the getting of the boxes. So, compelling reasons to protect the integrity of an ongoing law enforcement investigation, which this part of it, right, is just nonsense. I get so irritated with this stupid sort of excuse. Well, we can't talk about this. Well, why not? Because it's an ongoing law enforcement investigation. Okay, well, this isn't a drug investigation into the president's crackhead son, all right? This is a former president. You invaded his property, and you also, right, are doing it in the months right before an election. Also, for somebody who happens to be your number one political opponent, who is very likely going to be announcing any day now that he's running for office. So spare us the default ethical, contours of, well, we can't comment on an ongoing law enforcement investigation. It's an investigation of your political enemies. You have to comment on that one. Sorry. You don't get to just hide behind Hunter Biden excuses on this thing. Now, they reference footnote number 1, so we better read it. The government, they say, has carefully considered whether the affidavit can be released subject to redactions. Yeah, why don't they just blank it all out for us so that we can just see what's on there? Or we can't see what's on there. For the reasons discussed below, the redactions necessary to mitigate harms to the integrity of the investigation would be so extensive as to render the remaining unsealed text devoid of meaningful content. It's going to be just blacked out pages. And the release of such a redacted version would not serve any public interest. Nevertheless, should the court order partial unsealing of the affidavit, the government respectfully requests an opportunity to provide the court with proposed redactions. In other words, they want to dump a can of black paint all over the binder. So let's go back up. They continue. The government does not object to unsealing other materials filed in connection with the search warrant, whose unsealing would not jeopardize the integrity of this national security investigation. Subject to minor redactions to protect government personnel, namely cover sheets associated with the search warrant. Docket entry DE1, the government's motion to seal DE2, the government sealing order DE3. Docket entries 1, 2, and 3. Redact the people's names on them. The government's proposed redactions to those documents have been filed under seal under docket entry 57. The government now asks the court to unseal the materials contained in that filing under 2. Footnote 2 says, none of these documents contains new information that may implicate privacy interests of the former president, Trump. So the government has not conferred with his counsel regarding their unsealing. Similar stuff, it sounds like sort of duplicative form stuff. And actually, we can take probably a quick look at that. So let's see, 1, 2, and 3. Docket entries 1, 2, and 3. If we go back to the docket, we can see actually it's going to be these items. Yeah. So we can't even see what those are, right? Those are sealed. Those are probably, it's probably just, procedural paperwork type of stuff that's not relevant, sort of part of the initial filing of a case. So let's see what else they say. They're okay with that, and they're not even conferring with Trump about it because it's so insignificant. So they give us some procedural background now. They say, okay, Judge, look, we're opposing this for privacy reasons. Here's why. In recent days following the execution of the search warrant, in other words, the raid of Trump's house, several news organizations and other entities, we talked about the whole litany of them on the docket, asked this court to unseal the search warrant and other related documents. You can see all of them here. We've got Judicial Watch, shout out, New York Times, CBS, we have Washington Post, Florida Center for Accountability, Miami Herald, Dow Jones, ABC, all of them. All came crashing into the front of this thing. It's Trump! Ah! They say on August 10th, after the filing of the first motion to unseal, the court ordered the government to file a response by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on August 15, 2022. Check your time watches. There it is. It's the date. That's why we have the response. Following 2 additional such filings, and in order to, quote, avoid the need for individualized order, the court said just file one big response to all of this. That's what this is, the omnibus response. Now, on August 12th, we saw that the government filed its own motion with the court seeking to unseal the document, right, which we talked about last week. And they talk here about all the back and forth with the president. They filed that the president did not object to the motion. The court granted the motion and unsealed it. We already read through that, right? That's where we saw from Trump's 2 lawyers. So now they're making the argument. Judge, this is why we're here. We got through this whole thing. We agreed to unseal part of it. Trump's lawyers, we conferred with them. There's been this back and forth, round and around we go, but here we are. Got it? Got it. Here's our argument. They say, Judge, if you disclose this search warrant affidavit, it would irreparably harm the government and our ongoing criminal investigation. Okay, so their ongoing criminal investigation into Trump or to Trump allies or to people who are, I guess, housekeepers at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know. The press, they say, and the public enjoy a qualified right of access to judicial proceedings and judicial records. And so they're giving us the baseline, right? This is where they're saying, yeah, we know that there's a lot of public interest in this case and all these media companies are here. We get it. The unsealing of judicial materials is something that's very important, but it requires a balancing of competing interests. Why does the media want this versus why should we keep it sealed? Why does the public need it, or why should they be allowed to see it versus why can't we let this out? So they're going to say we got all of these factors to balance, and let's go through them very briefly. In balancing the public interest and accessing the documents against the party's interest in keeping it confidential, right? Public versus confidential. That's the balance here. The courts consider, among other factors, things like, so we're going to have a whole set of indicia, things like whether allowing access would impair court functions. So when I was in law school, I used to when I used to see these element types of tests in my notes, I would just sort of write, okay, balancing test. I would write like indicia, and I would just say 1, right? Impair court functions. 2, harm legitimate privacy interests. Okay, what would Trump have a privacy interest in if this comes public? Would it impair those privacy interests? The degree and likelihood of injury if it is made public. So 3, right? Will it automatically be harmful if it becomes public or not? Sometimes stuff can become public without any harm. Sometimes stuff becomes public and then it becomes harmful, but not always necessarily one after the other. The reliability of the information, okay? How reliable is what we're talking about? Is it speculative? Whether there will be an opportunity to respond to the information, number 5. And number 6, whether the information concerns public officials, oh, Trump there, or concerns, so number 6, and the availability of less onerous alternatives to sealing the documents. So can we get access to the information other ways that doesn't require sealing? So you got sort of 7 different factors, and the courts, will sort of be balancing those different things. It's okay, well, If we open this up, is it going to impair court functions? Well, maybe not the court, but maybe prosecutorial functions. What's the likelihood that public could be injured? Well, I don't know. If these are nuclear codes and they tell us what's in the affidavit, and Joe Biden's Taliban now, they're in charge of Afghanistan. They're presidents over there. So they just send their new Secret Service over to take the nuclear codes from Trump or wherever these are. And then it becomes World War III, the Taliban rule the world. That could hurt American interests, certainly. So if that happens, right, they want to stop that from being released. So they're going to go through all these 7 factors. They say in the 11th Circuit, one factor that really stands out is if there is prejudice to an ongoing criminal investigation. They say that's pretty compelling. If this could hurt the government's investigation, well, that might justify the closure of those records. Citing a bunch of cases, and we'll fast forward through most of that. A lot of case law. You can see here's another one, 2009, Southern District of Florida. They say even when the public is already aware of the general nature of the investigation, revealing the specific contents of the search warrant could alter the investigation's trajectory. Yeah, it's going to screw it up. Reveal ongoing and future investigative efforts, and it could undermine the agent's ability to collect evidence or obtain truthful testimony. In addition to the implications for the investigation, the release of this type of investigative material, right, could have, quote, devastating consequences for the reputations and the rights of individuals whose actions and statements are described. Some footnotes. Courts, they write, have also denied requests to partially unseal redacted versions of these investigative materials, where doing so would fail to protect the integrity of law enforcement investigations. A lot of law there. They say here the government has a compelling, overriding interest in preserving the integrity of this ongoing criminal investigation. It's more important to keep it secret than it is to make it public. As the government has readily acknowledged the circumstances here involving a search of the premises of a former president, they involve matters of significant public concern. Yeah, that's an understatement. Good Lord. As a result, in an effort to ensure public access to materials that no longer need to be sealed to protect the investigation, the government sought to unseal the search warrant, its attachments describing the premises to be searched and the property to be seized, and the property receipt provided to President Trump's counsel. The court granted that motion with the consent of Trump, who had previously received these materials, and the materials are now public. And from these disclosures, writes the prosecutor, the public is now aware of, among other things, the potential criminal statutes at issue in this investigation. Okay? See docket entry 17, the attachment to the search warrant. Writing here, they're actually giving you the quote. They're saying this is all that the public needs to know. Okay, this is it. You don't need to know anything more than this. This is it. From these disclosures, the public is now aware, among other things, of the potential criminal statutes at issue. They cite them for us here, 18 U.S. Code 793, 2071, and 1519. And they're presidential records, it's espionage, and the other one. Some administrative destruction of administrative materials, right? That's it. And we say, okay, thank you for that, right? I'm as irritated now as I was on Friday when we talked about it. Thank you. That's not enough. Okay, this is, as I said, it's not the crackhead president's son. And the general nature of the item seized, including documents marked classified, the property receipt. That's all. It's good enough for you, America. That's all you need. The government determined that these materials could be released without significant harm to its investigation because the search had already been executed and publicly acknowledged by the former president, and because the materials had previously been provided to the former president through counsel. Therefore, that's good enough. You don't need to know anything more about it. Take these little scraps that we gave you from the DOJ. So they write, disclosure at this juncture of the affidavit supporting probable cause, right? The actual thing that we all want to read, the statement. We've read, I don't know, dozens of them here. If you release that and read the paragraphs of the agents who were involved in getting the warrant through this judge, they say if you release that, it would cause significant and irreparable damage to this ongoing criminal investigation. So don't do it, Judge. As the court is aware from its review of the affidavit, Judge, you read this, it contains, among other critically important detailed investigative facts. Among other critically important and detailed investigative facts, here's what it has. Highly sensitive information about witnesses is in the affidavit, including witnesses interviewed by the government, specific investigative techniques, and information required by law to be kept under seal pursuant to federal rules of criminal procedure. If disclosed, the affidavit would serve as a roadmap to the government's ongoing investigation. What a joke. Oh my, that's like any affidavit ever is a roadmap. Just go look up an SPN, just go look up, that's such a joke. You can just go look up any affidavit for any crime. Just go on Westlaw, find anybody who is charged by the feds under these statutes, and just find the FBI affidavits associated with those criminal charges. Oh, start with Snowden, start with Assange. Easy places to start, right? They've all been charged under similar statutes. So don't tell us that they're trying to hide something from us. Otherwise, it could really, how many other ongoing investigations of former presidents do you have going on right now? Like, how many other former presidents are sitting around going, I can't wait to get my hands on an affidavit on Trump's indictment, so that on Trump's search warrant, so I know if I'm guilty or not. All of the other former presidents will be sitting around providing specific details about its direction and likely course. It's going to compromise future investigative steps, either for Trump or for other, future criminal presidents. Maybe Trump wins again, right? If we show him what happened now, when he wins again, he's going to know what we did. So we don't want him to see it. In addition, information about witnesses is particularly sensitive given the high-profile nature of this matter and the risk that the revelation of witness identities would impact their willingness to cooperate with the investigation. Yeah, so they don't want a little Cassidy Hutchinson problem to go down, where they bring out somebody and their story suddenly turns to garbage, suddenly becomes under cross-examination. If you see who is involved in this, who are these people who are telling you what was in Trump's boxes in Melania's closet? Who were they? Let's talk about them, right? Because a lot of people were able to unpack all of Cassidy Hutchinson's lies. In fact, it was very easy to, because they were so obvious. She didn't write the note. The creepy panda lawyer did. So why don't you just tell us? Impact their willingness to cooperate with the investigation? Why would that matter? If the public knows who they are, would they suddenly flip? They wouldn't cooperate with you anymore? Then why are they cooperating with you now? Are they not reliable? Here they say, they give us some details here. This is not merely a hypothetical concern. Given the widely reported threats, oh gosh, here we go again, against law enforcement personnel in the wake of August 8th. Armed man is killed after trying to breach the FBI Cincinnati office. Remember that one from the New York Times? Hysteria all over the media on that one. Over the weekend, there was the other story about the guy who, eliminated himself, unfortunately, outside the Capitol building. There was, on Twitter, they were giddy as hell about that one too. He pulled up to the barrier at the Capitol, got out of the car, shot some rounds up into the air, got out of the vehicle, didn't shoot at anybody, and eliminated himself. And, Twitter was like, oh, God, the Capitol insurrection 2.0. It's happening right now all over the place. Hysterical people. And they're just giddy for it. I don't think I have any clips of that today. We have footnote 6. It says, given the court is considering motions to unseal this affidavit merely days after reviewing these materials, the government is mindful that this court is familiar with the highly sensitive contents of this affidavit and the specific harms that would result from its unsealing. However, if the court would like the government to file a sealed ex parte supplement, meaning that the other side doesn't see this, like, Judge, if you want us to tell you some other things that we can't tell them, we'll do that, but we're not going to do that unless you order us to tell you stuff in secret. That addresses this with more specificity about the contents of the affidavit and the harms identified, the government stands ready to do so. We'll have a secret conversation with you, Judge, if you would like us to do so. They write, disclosure of the government's affidavit at this stage would also likely chill future cooperation by witnesses whose assistance may be sought as this investigation progresses, as well as other high-profile investigations. Because if people know that you're investigating them, they're not going to cooperate with you. Well, that's their right to do that. I mean, all right. The fact that this investigation implicates highly classified materials further underscores the need to protect the integrity of the investigation, and it exacerbates the potential for harm if the information is disclosed to the public prematurely or improperly. They write, as Judge Jordan explained in prior case law, the risks of disclosing specific details of an investigation are manifold and devastating. Acts in the affidavit described could act as a roadmap for further investigations. Yeah, all of the other presidents who are going to be, have their homes raided. Further, in view of what the government has already moved to make public, there is no less onerous alternative to sealing the affidavit. Unlike the property receipt, they say the government moved to unseal because it's got minor things in there. They say the affidavit cannot responsibly be unsealed in a redacted form, as it would be so extensive as to be useless. There is simply no alternative to sealing that could protect this information. He said there would be people who could read between the lines and discern the identities of certain individuals and dates and other critical case-specific information. The case law cited by here is distinguishable. So all of the media people are saying, look, there's been prior case law that says we do get access to this. They're saying, the prosecutors are saying, all of the media people, we can distinguish our claims here from their claims. And I agree with this. Every single case ever is distinguishable because this involves a president. So, that's why a lot of this is frustrating, because everything is distinguishable. In other cited cases that involve requests to unseal warrants in the investigation phase, the court ultimately concluded the government's compelling interest in protecting the integrity is outweighed by the public's right of access, saying that in regular, ordinary circumstances, yeah, this stuff stays sealed. And they got a bunch of case law. 1988 here. We've got another one from 2007, another one from 1996, Northern District of Georgia. They say, unsurprisingly, none of these cases concern circumstances remotely similar to these, where there is an active investigation. A search was just executed days ago. So they say those people who want access to the warrant, they quote these opinions for general principles about the right of access, but the actual application of those factors favor the government's position here. And again, yeah, this is not the same thing at all. Protecting the integrity of the investigation, right? Your investigation is to the point where you have gotten a warrant and raided his house. So it's appropriate to know what justified that. That action, that needs to be justified. Conclusion, the court should deny motions by third parties to the extent they seek to unseal the search warrant affidavit because the parties have already briefed this matter extensively. The government submits this. We don't need a hearing on it. Please make a ruling on it. Signed off on by U.S. Prosecutor Juan Antonio Gonzalez over from the DOJ. And that is the 13-page motion, and it was filed in the court docket today. So they are opposing this, right? They do not want this unsealed. They do not want you to see it at all. And there's going to be a response, very likely, filed by all of those different media personnel, everybody who wanted to intervene on the case, and we'll see what the judge rules. Of course, we will continue to follow that, and so don't forget to subscribe. When those rulings come out, we'll make sure we let you know. And if the judge rules to unseal it, well, then we'll get that affidavit, but I'm not so sure we're going to go that route. Remember, the judge, he may have some interests against Donald Trump. We'll have to wait and see. Now, we also know that over the weekend, Donald Trump was very active. Donald Trump is telling us the FBI seized his passports when they raided his home in Mar-a-Lago. That's a big problem. It's not just his passports. It might be some other highly privileged materials. So today we're going to start with this headline from Fox News. They say, FBI seizes privileged Trump records during a raid, and the DOJ opposes the request for the independent review. We've already went through the actual motion that was filed today by the DOJ. They do not want you to see that affidavit associated with the warrant, and maybe there's some reasons why. Maybe because there's some documents in there that they shouldn't have. Exclusive, Fox tells us the FBI seized boxes containing records covered by attorney-client privilege and potentially executive privilege during its raid of Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, sources say. Sources familiar with the investigation, they tell us that the president's team was informed that these boxes labeled A14, A26, A43, A13, A33. We've got, a lot of threes here on the back end, but no real pattern there. And a set of documents, all seen on the final page of the FBI's property receipt, contained information covered by attorney-client privilege. And we were trying to sort of envision how this was working, because you just walk out with those boxes, and I don't know how everybody else, works here, but I have a lot of work stuff at my home. In fact, I work from home now most of the time. I have an office and I go there to, spend time with the team and do team-like things. But because of my schedule and because of what I do, I'm sort of home a lot of the time. And the president is somebody who is not dissimilar from that. And so anytime you change jobs, my first law firm, I walked out with boxes, and I had boxes sitting in my garage for a year until I went to my second law firm, and then got to, move the box over to that law firm. And it's kind of one of these things that just, sort of happens. And you ask yourself, well, is that what we're talking about here, right? Were these Trump's records and sort of, notes with his lawyers and his, executive team, his executive staff, and so on and so forth? Well, we don't know, but we do know that there was a lot of conversating taking place between Trump and the DOJ and NARA, the National Archives, because they were trying to sort a lot of this stuff out. And the New York Times gave us some details. They're actually saying that Trump and his team were saying that these materials had already been returned. And so we've got several different components to this, sort of, are you in possession of confidential documents? Like physical possession is one thing. Then we've got, right, in possession or returned, that's an issue. Then we have confidentiality. Was it confidential or not, if that matters? And then you have sort of presidential authority to declassify, and whether that supersedes confidentiality. You got all these layers. And so it's very academic to do this analysis in circles unless we know more about what the actual investigation is about. Giving us three broad statutes is not enough. Trump lawyer tells the DOJ that the classified material had been returned. Beautiful picture of Mar-a-Lago that was just invaded by the FBI. An inventory was taken, but at least one lawyer from the former president, Donald Trump, signed a written statement in June asserting that all material marked as classified and held in boxes in a storage area had been returned to the government. Four people with knowledge of the document said. Okay, so somebody in Trump's orbit signed this document. We've got everything. Does that mean that somebody who was in Trump's orbit said, no, you don't? There's boxes A26, A33, A47, and so on in the closet. And they sent that over to the DOJ or to National Archives. And so four people know that this Trump lawyer said, I returned my library books. And then somebody, the hall monitor at the high school, said, oh, he didn't really return his library books. He's a liar. So they went to the library hall monitor or teacher and they said, he didn't return his library books. And they said, oh, you're kidding me. Well, we hate that kid anyways. So why don't we just go kick in his front door and beat his head over the head with the blackboard eraser? And that's exactly what happened. But this took place at the president's former residence in Mar-a-Lago. And this is a conversation that is not illegitimate, right? It's we have to make these distinctions. Was it confidential? Was it in an inappropriate geographic region? Was this an authorized retention or a non-authorized retention? And on whose authority is the retention based? One lawyer says it was all returned. The written declaration was made after a visit on June 3rd by Jay Bratt, top counterintelligence official at the DOJ, National Security Division. The existence of the signed declaration, which had not been previously reported, is a possible indication that his team was not fully forthcoming with investigators. It could explain why a potential violation of a criminal statute related to obstruction was cited, right? They said they signed off on this document. I gave you all my library books back. They said, no, you didn't. The department, right, this might be the basis for seeking the warrant. Some snitch said that there's boxes somewhere, and so we got to go get them. It might also help further explain the sequence of events. An inventory of the material was taken, and the search encompassed many areas, not just the storage areas where boxes were held, but also Trump's office and residence. Inventory Unseal did not specify where the classified documents were. we had a very interesting statement here from Donald Trump when over the weekend there was subpoenas flying back and forth. But Donald Trump, after all of this unfolded, after the raid took place, he actually reached out to the Justice Department and acknowledged that the country was on fire. I'm trying to find this quote. Let's see if here. Yeah, there it is. Trump spoke with somebody from his team. The message that he wanted to convey over to the DOJ, according to a person familiar, was that the country is on fire. And he said, what can I do to reduce the heat? So it would go from Trump to his aide over to the DOJ aide, from the DOJ aide over to Merrick Garland. The country is on fire. He knows that people are outraged by the search. And so he's saying, what can I do to help? Now, people are talking about that, and they're saying that this was his cry for help, right? He's saying, oh, can I plead with you? Can I reduce the heat? Can you reduce the heat on me? I'll help you, help me, help you type of a thing. I'm not so sure about that because last week we also know that Donald Trump had to sit for depositions with Letitia Tishy James. And apparently after that interview or during that deposition, he wasn't rattled at all. He was sort of kind of happy and sort of giddy about what was taking place. He wasn't even concerned about it at all. So that is some additional activity from New York Times about what took place there at Mar-a-Lago. Over the weekend, Donald Trump was on Truth Social, and he had a lot to say about this recent raid. Let's go through some of his posts. He said this, wow, in the raid by the FBI of Mar-a-Lago, they stole my 3 passports, 1 expired, along with everything else. This is an assault on a political opponent at a level never seen before in our country. Third world. So again, right, these are boxes which may have many of his personal effects in them, including his passports, journal notes, like I have a desk here, like I have a desk drawer. Can you hear this? Full of crap in there. Did they take that? There's probably confidential information in there. They may go rummage through there. Maybe there's some confidential information in there. I don't know what's in there. Espionage, some this, that, or the other. Presidential records, this, that, or the other. Official materials, this, that, or the other, right? All right. Seizing his passports now so that he can't go anywhere, I guess. Trump says Republicans could win many additional seats, both in the House and the Senate, because of the strong backlash over the raid at Mar-a-Lago. Polls are showing that some lost Republican territory over the last number of weeks has been more than made up with the unannounced break-in by the FBI, which should never have happened. It's true. Should never have happened. Or maybe it should have, but they haven't told us that yet. And remember, Donald Trump deserves the same presumption of innocence as anybody in this country. If they're going to break precedent, break protocol, do something like this, they have the burden of proof to justify their actions. They haven't proven it. Trump posted this. He says, America has never suffered this kind of abuse in law enforcement. For the FBI to raid the home of the 45th president of the United States, or any president for that matter, he says, it's totally unheard of and it's unthinkable. This break-in, and that's the second time he calls it a break-in, says was a sneak attack on democracy in our republic, and was both unannounced and done at a time when the president was not even present. It was for political, not legal reasons, and our entire country is angry, hurt, and greatly embarrassed by it. Make America great again. It's Donald Trump. Yeah, it is a little bit embarrassing. Indeed, it is. He said, America, I just left a large gathering of people, and all they could talk about was the complete and total stranglehold that the radical left Democrats have over the DOJ and the FBI. It shouldn't be that way. Nobody goes after BLM, Antifa, or the rest, despite murder, beatings, and burning down large sections of cities, a very unfair double standard. They definitely won't attack the home of a former Democrat president, nor should they. Very peaceful. Very, very peaceful. Nor should they. It is all so out of control. Great simmering anger. But he did say peaceful right there. You can also see more posts. I told you he was just going. He says, oh, great. It's just been learned that the FBI, in its now famous raid of Mar-a-Lago, took boxes of privileged attorney-client material and also executive privilege material, which they knowingly should not have taken. By copy of this truth, I respectfully request that these documents be immediately returned to the location from which they were taken. Thank you. Man, he's so polite too. Look how nice he asked for that. I mean, that's something you teach like you're, I don't know. When do you start teaching kids things? I have no idea. 7, 9? Whenever you start teaching them manners, you should teach them manners like this. I respectfully request that these documents be immediately returned to the location from which they were taken. Thank you. Very, very polite. Let's see what else he has to say. Donald Trump said, by the way, the FBI has a long and unrelenting history of being corrupt. Just look back to the days of J. Edgar Hoover. In the modern era, nothing has changed except that it has gotten far worse. Look at Comey, McCabe, Strzok, and the lover Lisa Page. Check out the brilliantly written but damning IG reports. See what they were willing to do in order to get crooked Hillary Clinton elected. They failed and got caught. They spied on my campaign, pushed the fake dossier, and they illegally used the FISA court. The inspector general said the FBI acted with, quote, gross incompetence and negligence. I was fully vindicated in the Russia scam, the, quote, no collusion Mueller investigation, impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, and all else. Now they raid my home, ban my lawyers, and without any witnesses allowed, break the lock that they asked us to install on the storage area that we showed them early on, which held papers that they could have had months ago for the asking, and without the ridiculous political grandstanding of a, quote, break-in to a very storied, important, high visibility place just before the midterm elections. The whole world was watching as the FBI rummaged through the house, including the former First Lady's closets and clothing, exclamation point. Alone and unchecked. They even demanded that the security cameras be turned off. We refused. But there was no way of knowing if what they took was legitimate or there was a, quote, plant, question mark. This was, after all, the FBI. Donald Trump was letting loose on Truth Social and telling the truth and posting truths feverishly to communicate to the American people. And a big part of the debate that was taking place was about this confidentiality component, right? Many layers here. What about the geographic location? Can Trump have a home office with some leftover documents in there? Is anything a presidential record? Anything that was, sort of a lunch note or something like that? What counts? I don't know. A lot of questions there. We have to ask ourselves about privilege, executive privilege, attorney-client privilege. We have to ask about declassification and sort of the authority to declassify things, right? If you're the president and you're the ultimate, chief executive of the entire country, and you run the FBI as the head executive, and you want to declassify some of those documents, if you have to check with the FBI, do you really have the power to do that? It's like, if you have money in your bank account, your money that's in your bank account that you can't spend, is that really your money? No, it's not, right? Kind of the same thing here. Now, that argument is being made by Kash Patel. Kash Patel has some background in this. He's going to explain it to us. He was on with somebody, let's see what we've got here, on Fox News. And we're going to clip a little bit of this. Here he is, and he's on all the socials. I think he's got a podcast and all sorts of stuff. Kash Patel, make sure, there's his name right there. Make sure you go follow his work over on Rumble and wherever else you can find him. But here he was talking with this news anchor about some of this.
President Trump made it his mission to declassify and be transparent. In October of 2020, he issued a sweeping declassification order for every Russiagate document and every single Hillary Clinton document. Then on the way out of the White House, he issued further declassification orders, declassifying whole sets of documents. And this is a key fact that most Americans are missing. President Trump, as a sitting president, is a unilateral authority for declassification. He can literally stand over a set of documents and say, these are now declassified. And that is done with definitive action immediately. The fact.
Okay, so that's a pretty big statement. And a lot of people are saying that's not true at all, right? That's not true at all. If you have all these other agencies who are involved, or if you have let's say a congressional established agency that governs this, has jurisdiction over this, they may be outside of the separation of powers. Remember, this is a big part of this is separation of powers. If Congress can legislate away what the president can do, right, they have to have authority to do that. If the original Constitution gives you can trace it back to the origin story of the Constitution, then the president has that authority. And if another branch tries to encroach on it, we learned about this in social studies and civics class. You have checks and balances, and the competing branches are supposed to punch back on the other branches that are encroaching upon their powers. And so what Kash Patel is arguing, he's saying, no, it just goes back to the original power. So if Congress and all of these bureaucrats want to limit his ability to do this stuff, well, they can't, because that would limit his power.
That the bureaucrats at NARA who referred, remember, the National Archives are the ones that referred this to the Department of Justice, but they, the same principle, failed to refer Hillary Clinton to the Department of Justice when they got their hands on the classified emails from those servers.
We're coming back to that.
Switching gears a little bit to the national security officials involved. Me as a former national security prosecutor in the National Security Division where this case is being run out of, it's no surprise that the likes of John Garland, who was the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, who authorized the Russiagate hoax to begin with, is now the #3 official at DOJ. And Lisa Monaco is the #2 official, who was his superior back then.
Okay, did you hear what he said? So just a couple things. Used to be a special prosecutor for intelligence investigations, just like this one. Name dropped several people. And if you heard, he referenced Lisa Monaco. Also used to work in the same department. Guess where Lisa Monaco works now? She's deputy over at the DOJ. She works right under Merrick Garland. She's the person I've been screaming about for years. Merrick Garland is this little milquetoast guy. He was a Supreme Court nominee. He has never offended anybody in his life. I mean, purposefully. He doesn't know, he is so bland, and, he's just sort of a stand-in. He's very much like Joe Biden. He goes out, he reads a statement, probably has, tremendous ethics and all this stuff, all that, right? But he doesn't know how to navigate a political storm like this. And he's sort of just, kind of going through the motions. The people who are maneuvering the political components of this thing, it's Lisa Monaco. Merrick Garland's complicit. I'm not trying to make excuses for him. But he's not the brains behind these political operations. It is other people who are really moving things around behind the scene. And Kash Patel just gave us that hierarchy, that litany. It's all the same people. Why didn't they do the same investigation for Hillary?
These folks, and this is the thing I want to stress with, now that this is a quote-unquote ongoing FBI counterintelligence investigation, they will come out to the American public and be able to say, ongoing CI investigation, you will never be allowed to see the Russiagate docs or any other docs that President Trump lawfully declassified, and they will hide it from the public. And Congress has a monumental lift ahead of them. Come November, they better start subpoenaing these documents immediately and putting these people before the American public. Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray have failed in their mission to uphold the law. They have become political hucksters.
And they're talking about impeaching them. In fact, Marjorie Taylor Green filed impeachment documents. We're going to get to that in a minute. But this is sort of buttressed by, I believe this is one of Trump's lawyers or somebody who's on Trump's team. He's making the same point. He's saying, look, Donald Trump declassified all of these things, right? Standing orders for declassifications. And so they don't have, like, privilege, executive privilege, attorney-client privilege. You've got declassification authority. You've got, sort of the ability to do it on the fly, or did you already do it previously? Here's this guy.
I apologize for looking down, but I have to, it's so fresh, it's on my phone. It literally just came in. This is from President Trump's office. It just came in a few minutes ago. As we can all relate to everyone, as we can all relate to, everyone ends up having to bring home their work from time to time. American presidents are no different. President Trump, in order to prepare the work the next day, often took documents, including classified documents, to the residence. He had a standing order. There's the word I've been looking for.
Standing order.
That documents removed from the Oval Office and taken to the residence were deemed to be declassified the moment he removed them. The power to classify and declassify documents rests solely with the President of the United States. The idea that some paper-pushing bureaucrat with classification authority delegated by the President needs to approve the declassification is absurd.
Yeah.
I asked around over the last couple of days.
Like, is this an argument over a category of documents? That's what this whole debate's about? Just like a category of documents. Trump said they're declassified. They say they're classified. They say, we want the library books back. He says, no, they're my library books. Okay, they're not your actual library books. They're mine. I bought them or whatever. And they say, no, we're going to come get them. We're sending in the hall monitor to come down there and try on Melania's dresses while we're over there. They did that. And so I started to think about this, and I thought, my gosh, we do have some precedent on this. We have Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton was in a very similar situation. You remember she had all of those emails, all of those private records, and she actually deleted them. Remember that? So there were no boxes to haul out of her house. Not that the FBI raided her, as we're going to listen to. But had she had boxes, they wouldn't have raided her. But she deleted the boxes, right? She sort of incinerated them. She sort of put them in the shredder to some degree. Very similar saga. We wanted to know what were in Hillary's emails because of Benghazi and because of dead American ambassadors. A lot of people had a lot of questions about it. Unfortunately, when the FBI, that many people on the left are now saying is, very, very honorary and full of integrity and ultimately ethical, this was their response. This is in song format. Here is James Comey.
Good morning. I'm here to give you an update on the FBI's investigation of Secretary Clinton. What I want to do is tell you what we're recommending. But first, let me tell you what we found. 110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it make?
8 of those chains were top secret, 36 of those chains secret, and 8 contained confidential information.
What difference at this point does it make?
Everything I did was permitted. There was no law, no regulation.
Secretary Clinton should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email.
None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system, not even Gmail.
Well, first of all, nothing was marked classified.
To the contrary,
Nothing was marked classified.
there is evidence.
Nothing was marked classified.
Now let me tell you what we
Oh
found.
my gosh.
110 emails.
It was not the best choice.
52 email chains
It was a mistake.
have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it
8
make?
of those chains were top
It wasn't
secret.
the best choice.
36 of those chains
I said
secret.
it was a mistake.
And 8 contained confidential information.
What difference at this point does it
With
make?
respect to our recommendation, this is going to be an unusual statement in at least a couple of ways. Although there is evidence, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. I know there will be intense public debate. I know there will be intense public debate. I know there will be intense public debate. What difference at this point does it make? 110 emails.
It wasn't the best choice.
52 email chains
I made a mistake.
have been determined to contain classified information.
What difference at this point does it
8
make?
of those chains were
It
top
was not a
secret.
good choice.
36 of those chains
I said it was a mistake.
and 8 contained confidential information.
What difference at this point does it make?
All right. So I did not create that. Let me give you the source on that one. Absolutely amazing. And I don't know if this came from recently or if that was something that was created when the original saga came in, but I originally found it from this individual here, Miami for Trump, at Miami for Trump. So shout out to at Miami for Trump for posting it or re-upping it. You can see it's got 1.9 million views. So be sure to go give her a follow if you haven't already done it, because that is, that's the saga, right? That's the same thing here. All the people screaming and hemming and hawing about Donald Trump, about classified national security, all these problems, all sort of look the other way for old Hillary Clinton. So go check that out with Miss Miami, at Miami for Trump on Twitter to go get a full copy of that one. And here, let me just throw the link in the chat. Let me just link that up right in the chat on all the different chats while we're here on Rumble, shout out to Rumble, shout out to Locals, shout out to YouTube. If you want to go give her a follow, that's a good place to do it. All right, and so we also have now several additional segments to attend to. And what's coming up next? Where do we want to go is the question. And I think we're going to go with Marjorie Taylor Green. Yeah, that's where we're going to start. Marjorie Taylor Green, MTG, has filed articles of impeachment against Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General at the DOJ, for the FBI's invasion of Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, an invasion that took place with Merrick Garland's signature. He told us that he was very happy to sign off on this, and he personally approved the invasion. Marjorie Taylor Green, of course, is a representative, and she posted this on Twitter very shortly after the raid took place. You can see on August 12th at 2:49 p.m. She gave us a post. She says, "Read my articles of impeachment against Merrick Garland." And so we're going to do that here in a minute. But first, let's take a listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene's actual sort of explanation of this when she was in front of the Capitol building, detailing what this was all about. Here she is.
What they've been doing to President Trump is political persecution. Merrick Garland has abused his position of power as the Attorney General to politically persecute Joe Biden's enemies. And the whole purpose of this is to prevent President Trump from ever being able to hold office. So I'm on my way in the Capitol right now, and I'm introducing articles of impeachment on Merrick Garland, because we cannot tolerate this in America, where our great institutions are welded and abused in such a way to defeat people's political enemies. That's not what this is for, and it should never exist.
All right, so she actually went through with this. She filed articles of impeachment, and these are not all that complicated to file, which, you know, they're fun to file. We actually wrote one for Kamala Harris some time ago. We had an entire impeachment party that we had here on the show, and it was a lot of fun to sort of unpack all of that. Now, you can see these documents are a little bit difficult to sort of to read. Let's see if we can go back over to the Twitter account and see if these will pop open a little bit bigger for us. But yeah, here it is. Let me just go through this. It says House Resolution titled Impeaching Merrick Brian Garland, middle name Brian, Attorney General of the United States for what? Endangering, compromising, and undermining the justice system of the United States by facilitating the persecution of Joe Biden's political rival, Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States. Right? That's the resolution. That's the title of the bill. It says here, resolved that Merrick Brian Garland, Attorney General of the United States, is impeached for endangering, compromising, and undermining the justice system of the United States by facilitating the persecution of the president's political rival. It says specifically, Joe R. Biden Jr.'s political rival, Donald Trump, 45th president, and that the following articles of impeachment are exhibited to the United States Senate. They say these articles, in the name and of the people of the United States, are filed by and against Merrick Garland, the Attorney General for the U.S., in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for endangering and compromising the justice system for the same reason. They go to the basis for this impeachment in the Constitution, and then she's referencing where she gets the authority to actually do this impeachment. She tells us, the Constitution provides that the House of Representatives, quote, shall have the sole power of impeachment, and that the Attorney General, as a civil officer of the United States, shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So now where's the conduct? In his conduct, the Attorney General of the United States, in violation of his constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the laws of the Attorney General and of the United States and uphold the Constitution, Garland continues to materially endanger the justice system of the United States by persecuting his political adversaries at will. I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's true. Attorney General Garland, his personal approval to seek a search warrant for the raid, this is Article 1, on the home of the President Trump, constitutes a blatant attempt to persecute a political opponent, rather than adhering to an oath he took to defend and secure our country and to uphold the Constitution when he was sworn in and as Attorney General on March 11, 21. Garland has willingly refused to ensure that laws passed by Congress and signed by the president are faithfully executed. Attorney General Garland has failed to uphold his oath and has instead overseen a denigration of the principles of our democratic republic by politicizing the Department of Justice and utilizing the FBI as a federal police force to punish or intimidate anyone who questions or opposes the current regime. Attorney General Garland has taken measures to silence the voice of millions of citizens of the United States by persecuting the former duly elected and lawful president of the United States, Donald Trump. That's Article 1. Article 2 says, the Supreme Court upheld in the Department of Navy versus Egan that the president, as the commander-in-chief, has the power to control the classification and declassification of documents pertaining to national security. Reference case Navy v. Egan. The executive vesting clause of the Constitution grants the president the authority to declassify documents in the public interest that originated in any department or agency of the executive branch pursuant to Executive Order 13526. Attorney General Garland, in persecuting former President Trump over documents he legally declassified, has engaged in a pattern of conduct that is incompatible with his duties as a civil officer of the U.S. Attorney General Garland, in his failure to uphold the oath that he took, and by his actions, lost the trust of the citizens of the United States. Garland's efforts to unseal the search warrant for the home of former President Trump constitutes an attempt to intimidate, harass, and potentially disqualify a political challenger to the president, Joseph R. Biden. And so that's interesting. So that last paragraph, she sort of opposed to the efforts to unseal the search warrant. And that has really been my posture on all of this. You know, I don't know why yes, politically, Trump and the defense are wanting to, communicate. They've got nothing to hide. The DOJ stepped in this. But as a defense attorney, part of what you do is not make the government's job easier, right? Or sort of help them incriminate you further. So the idea that he should just be sort of open and cooperative with them is not my instinct as a defense lawyer, but that's probably because I'm just a defense lawyer. We had the final page from Marjorie Taylor Green. She says, Attorney General Garland's actions run counter to the steps that employees of the executive branch must take to avoid an appearance of loss of impartiality. Garland's failure to address the conflict of interest arises from the persecution of Biden's adversary Trump at the office of the Attorney General, and he is unfit to hold that office. By his conduct, he's demonstrated he's going to remain a threat to the justice system if he's allowed to remain in office, and therefore this warrants the impeachment and the trial and the removal from office and the disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Marjorie Taylor Greene's articles of impeachment against Merrick Garland, and we'll see, where those will stand for now. Probably not go much of anywhere, but the elections are just a few short months away. After those elections take place, there will be a changing of power, probably, that happens in January, and maybe those articles of impeachment get a fresh new look from Marjorie Taylor Greene and other representatives like Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert was on Fox News talking about supporting impeachment, and I'm pretty sure she told Laura Ingraham to her face that Fox News is liberal trash. I'm pretty sure that happens. Let's listen.
Congresswoman, great to have you on tonight. Let me get this straight. This is not about asking the DOJ to be transparent about what they're doing to a former president and potential future nominee of the party, but it's about checking our emotions at the door?
Listen.
Laura, Vox is a liberal rag that changes its tone based on whatever their communist overlords say. Just like the DCCC, they
What?
suffer from Trump derangement syndrome and can't see how this overreach threatens the civil liberties of all Americans. Look what has happened. Biden has weaponized the DOJ. Biden and Pelosi are currently weaponizing the IRS with 87,000 new armed IRS agents that are readily available to use deadly force. If the DOJ and the FBI can target President Trump and chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Scott Perry, they can target any American. And let me be very clear. This isn't some records dispute with the National Archives. This is political retribution against President Trump and Chairman Perry. Think about it, Laura. Chairman Perry files articles of impeachment against Attorney General Garland, and then he's the one whose personal cell phone is tracked down and taken by FBI agents. Attorney General Garland can send 30 FBI bullies if he wants to raid President Trump, apparently, but they cannot raid all 80+ million Americans that support President Trump and make up this MAGA movement.
Whoa. So, okay. So outstanding. That would, man, she hit that one pretty hard, right? Shout out to Zulu, who's back in the chat. Nice comment. Welcome back. Yeah, welcome back, Zulu. Yeah, I mean, that's right. He's, it's true. Even Zulu. So this is now, now I want to just play this intro again because Laura's kind of giving her some grief, right? Laura's saying, are you saying this is just like this? And she says, I'm laughing at you, you liberal commie.
Congresswoman, great to have you on tonight. Let me get this straight. This is not about asking the DOJ to be transparent about what they're doing to a former president and potential future nominee of the party, but it's about checking our emotions at the door?
Here it is.
Laura, Vox is a liberal rag that changes its tone based on whatever their communist overlords say. Just like the DCCC, they suffer from Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh, it's true. It's basically true. Oh, my goodness. And Laura just sat there and took it for a full minute. She just took it. Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, so that was Lauren Boebert, and she is calling it out on Fox News, calling Fox News liberal communists, and we'll continue to follow. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear this, but the guy who is blowing leaves outside decided to show up right now. It'd be a good time for him to do that. And he's right outside the windows, so that's really convenient. So we're going to just pause and say cheers to it's beverage time. We're going to take a beverage break here before we get into our final segment and the leaf blower goes out of the window. But we got Kari Lake coming up, some spicy meatballs from Kari Lake. She's talking about BDE. And, it's a good way to wrap up the show before we get out of here. Oh, yeah, okay. So chat says you can't hear the leaf blower outside. That's good. I actually have I put an expander on my audio panel, so hopefully that's helping with some of the the FBI. Yeah, the FBI landscapers are right outside. Great. Yeah, they're probably going to be executing a search warrant any minute now. Let's just hold the FBI. Just put your hands up already. All right. Great. All right. If that happens, well, you know what the deal is. All right. And so enough of that. Sounds like he's moving on, so we can just get right back into it. Kari Lake had something interesting to say very recently, talking about BDE. And this is a common phrase. She references that a lot of the youth are using it these days. And if you're not familiar with BDE, well, you can look it up, or I can just tell you what it means. It stands for Big DeStantis Energy. And I don't know what you were thinking it stood for, but here is Kari Lake explaining what that stands for and what it means. We're going to listen to Ron DeSantis, who comes out and demonstrates some of that BDE. And then we're going to wrap it up with Kari Lake. She was on the Charlie Kirk show, and they were having a conversation about Kari Lake's race. She's capturing a lot of eyeballs all throughout America here in Arizona. And she made the point, I think she's kind of onto something here, that this in Arizona is the most important race in the country because if Arizona falls, if America loses another border state, then Texas is next. And then we're all doomed. And so we got to check in with Kari Lake and that BDE. Here is how she explained it to all of us when she was at this conference over at Turning Point.
I'm going to tell you a little bit. I just got to spend time with him. Love the guy. Fantastic. He is gutsy. The guy has bigger... Okay. Wait, let me think about how I want to word this. My staff always says, whatever you do, do not say balls. So I'm not going to say it. That guy has a backbone made of steel. I'll tell you what he's got. I don't know if you heard of this, but he's got BDE. Anybody know what that means?
Oh!
Ask your kids about it later. I call it Big DeSantis Energy.
Gotcha!
Right? He's got the same kind of BDE that President Trump has. And frankly, he has the same kind of BDE that we want all of our elected leaders to have.
Kari Lake has some pretty BDE, doesn't she? I mean, can you say that? You know, I'm pretty sure she does. A lot bigger BDE than a lot of other dudes I know. So I'd say she certainly does. But it's pretty interesting to hear, you know, this language coming from, you know, sort of everybody. A lot more colorful language, a lot more aggressive language coming from top to bottom. Doesn't matter House of Representatives, gubernatorial candidates, state representatives, state races. It is becoming a lot more interesting. We have Ron DeSantis who came out. Now he's also responding to the Trump raid. And people are watching this very closely because, you know, they're saying that these two could be potential rivals in the upcoming primary race. Ron DeSantis, you know, out of Florida, capturing a lot of eyeballs. He's sort of second place in a lot of polls in the Republican primaries. And they were watching him to see if he's acting with glee at Trump's misfortune, you know, schadenfreude, or happiness is seeing your neighbor fall off his roof. Not your nice neighbor, not the little nice old lady, that other jerk, you know, who always does the thing with the garbage cans, you know, that guy. He falls off his roof and you sit there like a nice neighbor and you say, well, you know, what can I do about it? Ron DeSantis, is he watching Trump fall off the roof, giddy and gleeful, or not? People are listening to this and they want to see what he says. And it sounds like he's supporting him because he recognizes that this is a principled problem and he does not want to see it happen in America. Let's listen.
These agencies have now been weaponized to be used against people that the government doesn't like. And you look at the raid at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm trying to remember, maybe someone here can remind me about when they did a search warrant at Hillary's house in Chappaqua.
Yeah.
And she had a rogue server and she was laundering classified information. I don't remember them doing that. I do remember them manufacturing a false conspiracy theory about Russia collusion. I remember that. That was not true. That was an abuse of power. I remember a lawyer for the FBI got caught doctoring an application for FISA surveillance against an innocent man.
Yeah.
I remember the FBI at Merrick Garland's direction being sicked on parents going to school board meetings. Meanwhile, when you have a law that protects Supreme Court justices, is the FBI out there protecting our conservative justices? No. When you have violations of law where people are targeting pregnancy crisis centers, are they doing their job and enforcing the law there? No. They're enforcing the law based on who they like and who they don't like. That is not a republic. Well, it may be. It's a banana republic when that happens.
Okay, so Ron DeSantis, right? He's defending Donald Trump. He could easily not say anything, right? There's a lot of politicians who are not saying anything. Like, where's Mitch McConnell? He's been pretty quiet over this whole thing, right? And a lot of the other Republicans are sort of giddy and gleeful that Donald Trump might be falling off of his roof. They're not happy with him. And so any displeasure, misfortune that goes his way, they are happy to ignore, even if many people who support them are unhappy with that failure to support Trump. Lastly, we've got Kari Lake. She was on the Charlie Kirk show, And she was actually on there with Blake Masters. They were doing this sort of a tag team duo probably after that event. So you can see here's Kari Lake here. Here's Charlie Kirk. I think he's like the president or CEO of TP, very, very high up over there. And then you've got Blake Masters, who's running for Senate. So we've got kind of this pair who, these two candidates running for Arizona. Blake Masters is running against Mark Kelly, which is the apparent NASA scientist that we have as our senator, who has yet to explain how the new Infrastructure Act is going to bring more rain and water to Arizona. I still don't know how that's going to happen, but apparently if you spend like $700 billion, you can get more water to your state, which is great because we could use that. I'm wondering why we just don't spend more money then to just get more water, because apparently we can do that. I didn't know that was a thing. All right, I guess to change the weather, I guess we just spend money and the weather changes. It's gonna solve all of our wildfires. He's a NASA scientist. Okay, so here is Blake Masters, who's running against him for Senate, and he doesn't say much in this clip. But Kari Lake, man, she is good. She is polished as can be. She sort of outclasses everybody on this show, as a media personality. And as you watch this clip, I noticed this very well. They have a multi-camera thing going on. So, I have multi-cameras that I'm working on setting up. So I notice when I watch this stuff. But Kari Lake, she looks at this, she'll look at another angle. She actually is following the cameras around, whereas the other guys are not. And, she was a former news anchor, so she's very, very good at this stuff. And, I expect to see her run for president, not far off, like pretty soon. Like maybe not 2024, but pretty soon. She's good at it. Here, let's listen.
I know it sounds highly suspect because I'm running, but I think my race is the most important race in the country. We cannot afford to lose another border state to a socialist. Look at California. Look what's going on in New Mexico. We've got to hold this state and hold it tight, and we need someone who's going to be tough on the border. That's why I believe one of the reasons that I
watch her look at the other camera. Watch
I had
over
a
here.
border plan. I have a
here.
border plan that is going to be the most aggressive, bold border plan that this country's ever seen.
Nobody else is looking at the
We're going to start
camera.
implementing it on day one, and we can't get a Katie Hobbs in there because she's an open borders person. She's an open borders globalist, and she has no desire to close that border and stop the drugs from coming over. Scares the heck out of me. I think Arizonans are onto it, and I think they're going to vote like their lives depend on it because, frankly, our country depends on it. And that's why we get donations from out of state, Charlie. I am the governor of Arizona. I will be the governor of Arizona, but this governorship is really almost the governor of other states as well.
Yeah, it's the beachhead for so many other states.
Because the border problem impacts every other state. And, if you're in North Carolina, your governor might care about the border, but he or she can't do anything about it because they're not on the border. It's going to take the border governor of Arizona to do it.
All right, so go check the rest of that interview out over at the Charlie Kirk Show. They're right next door on YouTube. He's got his channel, and Kari Lake's got all her channels. But I think she's exactly right. And that clip wasn't the clip that I was thinking about. There's other clips where she's following the cameras around. It's really amazing. But anyways, the point is, she is running. She's got some of that same BDE that she says that Trump and DeSantis has, and I think that's allowed these days. She's allowed to have that. So shout out to Kari Lake and our people in Arizona. It's going to be a very interesting race to watch. I think there's going to be all sorts of money being poured into this, and I can't wait until she wins. It's going to be a lot of fun to listen to her agitate the rest of the country, not all of the country, but large portions of it, for another 4 years when she's in the governor's office. So we'll continue to follow Kari Lake, and I hope you join us on that journey. Thank you for subscribing and following along as we do. All right, my friends, and that was it, man. 4 segments that we got through. We talked DOJ objecting to Donald Trump and the warrant release. They do not want you to see that. National security implications, and they don't want to jeopardize other investigations, I guess, of other presidents or something. They don't want to ruin those potential. You might know how they investigate espionage with presidents if they tell you. Trump passports seized, apparently. They went through a bunch of his privileged materials. As they took boxes out, he communicated about all of that on Truth Social. Big debate about declassification, whether he can declassify things or not, right? That's going to be an ongoing debate. And if it really boils down to whether a document should have been in this bin or this bin, and that led to all of this, don't think it's going to work out well for the DOJ or for the Democrats. Marjorie Taylor Green filed articles of impeachment. We read through some of those. I expect those to be sitting around probably on a desk somewhere until the Republicans take charge. And once they do, maybe those come to the forefront again. Lauren Boebert calling Fox News liberal commie trash for having TDS, which is true. And Kari Lake dropping BDE energy all over the place. We covered a lot of ground, my friends. And now it is time to hear from you and our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I also saw some serious super chats coming in today, and so I appreciate that, everybody on YouTube. At the start of the show, we had Naples Live. General Kale was the one who got us kicked off. And so we're going to start today. Let's start over on Locals and see what's going on over there. I'm going to do a quick refresh here before we dive into it. And so that is refreshing. We've got General Kale is here. He started the show off. He says, seen no one address this yet. Indictment inevitable. What, if anything, will DeSantis do? Good segue. Thank you for that, General. Use NG or LE to block Mar-a-Lago from the feds. Fair trial is laughable. Wow. Use the National Guard or law enforcement to block Mar-a-Lago from the feds. Could you see that happening? Wow. What a comment from General Kale. I love that. Yeah, General Kale is, that's kind of prime location for that. Ron DeSantis could really make a stand on that. They indict him. They want to come serve him in an indictment. They say, not on my watch. Send the feds into my town. See what happens. That would be the most incredible thing ever. I would be so happy. All right, let's see what else. We had Naples Live with the super chat. Naples Live music. It sounds beautiful. I want to go listen to them. We have GLS Inc. says, Robert, if you red pill your FBI monitor, the DOJ will be pissed. Clank. Do I have an official monitor? Are you out there? I don't know. I better keep my eyes open on our morning walk and talks. Stephen Nizek is here, says, when Trump throws his hat into the ring for 2024, I want President Trump to demand that Attorney General personally hand his passport back to him. Wax up. Take that from you, Merrick. Thank you. Here's Alt Lag says, I'm old enough to remember all the way back to last year when the FBI leaked privileged communications between Project Veritas and their attorneys to the New York Times. How long till they leak Trump's documents to them? Sarcasm. Probably not long, right? That's been the playbook. They do press release, leak to Washington Post, press release, leak to New York Times, and around we go. Good to see you, Alt Lag. Yeah, I mean, the FBI has been doing this crap for years. We've covered all of it. We've covered Sussman. We covered a lot of Whitmer. We covered Bannon, right? List goes on and on. All the J6 stuff. Where's the pipe bomber at? Anybody know? Practical Nomad says, this is very comical at this point. It is almost comical. Like, it really is. Like, as somebody who, went to law school, practices law, runs a law firm, right? Has represented thousands of people in criminal cases. It's like, what world are we living in? It's like bizarro world. As strange as this might feel to you, it is like, it's like nuts. That's why a lot of people are spinning their wheels on this thing because they don't know what the out is. What's the off ramp on this thing? Is there an off ramp? I'm not sure there is. That's how stupid this whole decision was. But they'll have to see. I mean, unless Trump comes out, or they come out and Trump was selling, missile silos to Kim Jong. And we all go, okay, all right, you got to indict the guy. But I'm going to doubt that happens. So unless that is, the off-ramp, I don't know what the off-ramp is. And a lot of people have some concerns about that. Donald Trump even told Merrick Garland, things are getting pretty hot there, buddy boy. Let me know how I can help. Atheist Miracle says it's obvious they have an informant. The affidavit would make that information public and expose the informant. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that informant's a big liar, which is why they don't want to expose that informant, just like Cassidy Hutchinson was. Raymond Loera says, devastating consequences such as impeachment of Clinton, devastating consequences of the public learning a president deleted conversations. Yeah, right. It's always devastating consequences when it's your political opponent, but when it's your team, it's just an error. Or as Comey said in his song, it's extremely careless. It's not actually anything that is illegal. Naples Live became a member for 3 months. Shout out to Naples Live. And we do morning walk and talks over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and also on members on YouTube, right? And so Naples Live Music is going to get those as well. But yeah, we have a lot of fun. Let me pull up one of these morning walk and talks. Here's one from this morning. It kind of looks like this. It's, nothing fancy. It's just me with the camera walking around.
It's
that's about 30 minutes, 30-minute video.
People will tell the story.
So we post that, on every morning, save for Sundays. But they're a lot of fun, and so we did talk about that. Naples Live is going to get that. Naples Live says, Trump didn't pack those boxes, his staff did. One of his lawyers signed off on the contents to the National Archives. And yeah, we did that. Yeah, we covered that story. We probably submitted that before we covered that. But it's exactly right? That now you have questions about Donald Trump's implication versus just some staffer, right? You've got like degrees of separation. So now is all of this going to result in a criminal charge for some staffer? Like, is that what we're talking about? Ridiculous. All right. We had Vaso is here. What's up, Vaso? Says, my friend works in the Bureau. Agents are pissed, not only about the raid, but this has made them even more as targets. There are talks about taking legal action. I'm not sure what the FBI, what they're going to be able to do. I mean, other than quit, sue the feds, sue their employer. I'm not an employment lawyer, but I don't know. This is a sort of a political decision. Their bosses made a decision. They sort of have to follow it or leave, resign. James Clark says, good to see you, Vaso. Thank you for the question. James Clark says, if POTUS can pardon anyone at any time without procedure, what is the difference if POTUS declassified documents without procedure? I guess that's a great point. I guess there is no real difference. Is they're saying that by virtue of him, doing something, it is the declassification process. He doesn't have to go through 35 different people to get approval for it. Because if he did, then he doesn't really have that power. The person that decides whether he gets access to it has the power. The person who says, no, you can't see this, right? They're really in charge of confidential materials, not the president. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you say if the president can pardon anyone at any time, what's the difference with declassified documents? Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like plenary power, right? You've just got total power to do it. Nobody debates it. And I think what you're saying is there's another link in the Constitution, another example in the Constitution of how that might operate mechanically. When the president has plenary power, that unilateral power to do something, how does it work? Well, we can look to the pardon power to get an idea. Good comment, James. Rod Southern with a super chat, no question. Thank you, Rod Southern. James Miller says, I'm not sure if Lauren Boebert said Fox or Vox when Laura interviewed her. Either way, I have no problem calling out Fox News. Oh, maybe it was Vox. I don't know. Maybe it was Vox. It could have been Vox. See, I'm glad somebody corrected me on that. It sounded like Fox, though, right? And it's a little bit too... Oh, man, is it Fox? I liked it better when it was Fox, not Vox. But I don't know. It's complicated. That makes more sense. Vox. I forgot about that. And they are liberal communists, so that kind of makes more sense. All right, well, thanks for the correction on that one, James. All right, now I think my locals has refreshed, and so let's go on over there and see what we've got. I see chatting away. We've got Jason on blast, John McGarvey. Here's what the chat looks like. And we've got a super chat that came in here today from Chris Wiseman. Chris Wiseman says, Robert, I found a very interesting ruling from the, let me scroll this down a little bit. Where'd that go? Oh, dang it. I think I just lost that. All right. Okay, so sorry about that. I'm going to have to figure out what happened there. Sorry. All right, well, I think that came from John McGarvey and something about NARA. I don't know what happened. I deleted it somehow. All right, and I'm struggling over here on this one. Okay, so we're pulling up the comments thread just so we can just dive right into the comments. And this one, hopefully I don't botch. We're scrolling all the way down to see what we've got over here. And the first one is from John Dillard. He says, the Democrats are going to win the midterms. And he says, and no one's going to be held accountable. No one's going to be held responsible, which it doesn't sound good. Democrats are going to win the midterms and no one is going to be held accountable. Echo says, looks like that. And there's some commentary going on about it. Sedona Rocks is here, says President Trump has been defending himself from all the letter agency for years. I think this comic is brilliant. And you can see this one. Yeah. DOJ, FBI, rhinos, IRS, MS Media, Democrats versus Trump, we the people, standing firm. Yeah, as I said, right, if they can just go and invade the president's residence, they can certainly do that to you. And they do. They do it to people all over the place. Here, Heather is here, and shout out to the three girlies, along with the youngest girlie, who is always in the house. I had to close a button. Sorry about that. Shout out to the youngest girlie and three girlies. Heather says, Juan Williams, super lefty, left of the leftist left, idiot in my book, said that the reason why they shouldn't unseal the affidavit is because it's supposed to protect the innocent. In this case, I think it's to protect the FBI and the DOJ. Do you agree with the idea of not unsealing the affidavit because it protects the innocent? Well, I guess it depends on who he's talking about the innocent is. I mean, if Donald Trump wants the affidavit unsealed, I think it should be unsealed. I mean, we're talking about his guilt or innocence, right? So I would defer to Trump. If he's talking about, you know, people who are, I don't know, confidential informants or who are witnesses or any of that other crap, I don't care about any of that. Protecting those people against what? Having to testify against a defendant? You don't get a protection for that. Juan wants to protect who? The people who snitched out Trump? Okay, that's noble, but you have what's called the confrontation clause in this country. And you get to go and cross-examine people who are making allegations against somebody else. And you have a right to know how the chain of custody was developed that gave them probable cause to get access to your residence in the first place. So, no, Juan Williams, I don't know who he's talking about protecting the innocent. The only person whose guilt or innocence is at play here, as far as we can tell, is Donald Trump. So if he wants this out in public, well, then it should be out in public. But again, maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're asking, Heather, but I think he's probably talking about the same thing that the prosecutors are talking about, which is, you know, all of those people that if we know who they are, they're going to be all scared and afraid or whatever. I don't care about that at all. Their rights to sort of hide behind anonymous allegations, and they can do that all they want, but not in criminal prosecutions, and not in criminal prosecutions like this one, where it involves a former president and completely unprecedented behavior. No. Thank you, Juan. And Heather. Shout out to the youngest girlie. Facts Matter says, is the judge's ruling on unsealing the affidavit appealable? Yeah, I mean, yes, you can appeal. You can basically appeal anything. Sort of, you can appeal, typically called like special actions. You can appeal different rulings in cases and things like that, certainly. But yeah, we're not there yet because we don't know what Trump's position is on it or if he's going to give a position. We didn't see that in their motion. We have Jason on blast. He says, yikes, I had an eye doc appointment, but here I am. Looks like I missed some really interesting stuff. Going to rewatch the earlier stuff tonight. Well, I hope your eyes are good, Jason on blast. That's sort of scary stuff, you know, eye doc appointments. Hopefully it's just routine, getting those checkups, you know, glasses and all of that stuff. I don't have any of that stuff. But I wonder how my vision's doing. You know, I haven't checked it in a long time. Not that I have any problems, but could I see those little E's still? I don't know. It's tough. John McGarvey says, hey, Rob, are you considering or are you open to guests and long-form interviews down with Cheney? Yeah, I am, actually. And so I am working on several things at the moment. So I'm not ready to share it with you today, but yeah, I've got multicam set up for some longer-form interviews. There's a lot of activity going on in Arizona. I think that it might be useful to sit down with some people, to have conversations with them. I've got a lot of stuff cooking, and thank you for the suggestion. I'm open to suggestions. Yeah, if you have any people you think I should talk to, I don't know that I'm a great interviewer or an interviewee, and so I have to sort of work on that skill set a little bit. But I think it's worth developing, certainly. Former LEO says it appears by the timing of the search warrant, it was to serve the DOJ to cause maximum disruption for political process. Government will keep the contents of the affidavit secret, much the same as promoting Hunter's laptop as a hoax. the government is inserting itself to damage the Democratic Party. You think so? With the midterms approaching, the time is of the essence. Would an appeal to SCOTUS be appropriate? So I don't know what we would be. You would appeal to SCOTUS to unseal the affidavit. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to work your way up that chain, right? Like he'd have to deny it, then you'd have to go up to the Court of Appeals and then up there, or I don't think so. I don't think that they would say it's timing is of the essence of this case for something like this. Maybe if it was Trump running for office, but he's not even running for anything, right? He's not even running for a position. Former says, since the government has seized documents that are protected, lawyer, client, doctor, patient, husband, wife, can an injunction be filed to keep the government overreach to a minimum? Government cheated. The bell can't be unrung. Former, I would refer you over to Jonathan Turley. He actually did a nice analysis on this where he talks about the process by which you'd get a special master appointed. So think of it like if you've ever bought or sold a house, like you have an escrow, right? You kind of put your money in escrow until the deal closes. Same type of thing here, right? Give your documents to a special master who holds on to them. You say, those are privileged. I don't want the government looking through that. So then you appoint this person to look through it. They make the decision on what is appropriate to see and not see. Thunder 7 says, we know the Dem playbook. It's always the same. Project their crimes onto Trump, create chaos and disinfo with the intel, rely on informers that cannot be named to try to incite the MAGA crowd into reacting violently against their tyranny. Then they get away with breaking the law by diverting attention to the deplorable, racist, anti-trans domestic terrorists. Still not going to stop the red tsunami coming in November, and karma is coming for the swamp. Good to see you, Thunder. Tim Flynn says, Rob, could you elaborate on what type of information can be found in the affidavit that isn't already available? Would they have to establish the probable cause for every alleged crime? Would they have to name who they suspected of the crime, or would that only be in the arrest warrant? So, yeah, I'm trying to think, like, if I can read you the affidavit or just pull up an affidavit example real quickly. I might actually be able to do that because of some of the cases that we have covered here. So let's say, for example, I think Peter Navarro, his criminal case, may have had an affidavit. So when we go, this is Peter Navarro's case. Indictment. No, he was indicted, so there was not an affidavit. All right. Basically, it's just a written summation. It's sort of like a narrative. It's almost like a police report to some degree. It just sort of summarizes what the investigation looked like, and it's a narrative. It's, I did this, I went here, all of these different things happened. Who got a search warrant that we covered? I'm looking at some of these here. I think most of what we've talked about, they've all been indicted. Let's look at Marilyn Mosby. See what she's got here. No, she got indicted too. Yeah, so I don't have a good example that I can grab right now. We've read many of them, but it's an FBI officer, special agent, writing something down. I mean, really, they're writing down what happened, and they're describing the facts that give them enough basis, not enough to convict somebody of a crime, because probable cause is a lower standard than beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not, it's a lesser threshold. So they only need probable cause, that there's enough there, to say that there's evidence of a crime that gives them access. Then that allows them to do their investigation, to gather evidence that then can be used to convict you beyond that probable cause standard, beyond a reasonable doubt standard. I'm sorry. So very good question, but they can be long. They can be 10 pages, 20 pages. It just sort of depends. Here, Thunder 7 says, want to give a little ray of hope regarding the FBI. 14 whistleblowers have come forward since Mar-a-Lago. Looks like many are joining up to expose corruption. The gutting to remove the swamp in the agency has finally begun. Always been swampy, but Obama weaponized it. Washington Examiner is reporting this. Jim Jordan is out. I think I saw this headline. Yeah, Jim Jordan says 14 whistleblowers have come forward. More than a dozen FBI whistleblowers have come forward to Republican investigators. During a conversation with others, DNI John Ratcliffe, Jordan made the case the public has, quote, figured it out when it comes to the FBI. 14 FBI agents have come to our office as whistleblowers, and they are good people. There are lots of good people in the FBI. It's the top. That is the problem. Some of these are good agents coming to us, telling us what is baloney, what's going on, the political nature now of the Justice Department. God bless them for doing it, talking about school board issues and a whole host of issues. All that came from Jim Jordan. Thank you for that, Thunder 7. We had another one. Heather says, you don't wait to teach manners until 7 or 9, LOL. Yeah, I was just kidding. You start teaching manners when they start toddling. If you wait until 7 or 9, you already lost them about that age. They try not to use manners you taught them. I know, I'm just kidding, Heather. I plan, if I ever did have kids, my kids, they're going to start mowing the lawn. When do they start walking? 18 months. So probably 2 years, probably. And they're going to have great manners in addition to setting the table every night. So yeah, they're getting started young if that happens. Heather says, oh, that was Kash Patel on Sunday Morning Futures. Very interesting interview with Devin Nunes. Says the second person is John Sullivan with Just the News. He has emphatically said he's not part of the Trump team. He only reports on the news and that he's doing the Russian investigative journalism. He was on Jesse Waters' Primetime when he had that interview. That's cool. Yeah, I'm not familiar with his work. I think I know his name, but I didn't recognize him. So I'll have to learn a little bit more about him. Thank you, Heather. Zach Nichols says, if we had to choose between ditch digger or deplorable, I'm still voting for the right. My theory is they're trying to dig a direct route to China. From Zach. Good to see you, Zach. Either one. I dug a lot of ditches in my day. We had here, Robute says, Merrick Garland is such a horrible human being for his political prosecutions by signing off on overbroad warrants. He sent the American Gestapo, a.k.a. the FBI, on parents for attending school board meetings. He involved in the entrapment scheme with Gretchen Whitmer before Merrick Garland. He should be known as Heinrich Müller. When the chief of the Gestapo, he should be the meme Merrick Garland photoshopped on top of Heinrich. Somebody's on that. Lynette's memeing it up right now. Miguel Labra says, blank check syndrome. The fall man is on it. Heather says, watching Lauren Boebert at 1.5 speed is hilarious. She looks like a chipmunk, a chipette even. Former LEO says, I looked it up and you can't say Big DeSantis Energy. It's Big DeSantis Energy. Thunder 7 says, I'm mentally prepared for when they arrest Trump live on TV and put him in handcuffs and leg irons. Oh my gosh, could you imagine? I'm not going to have a heart attack like I almost did when I heard about the raid. I'm prepared for anything they can do as the Biden government is completely lawless. It will lead to nothing. Just like everything they've done to him, but they're really into optics and how it looks to their lunatic left cult. I pray it doesn't happen, but I'm not going to be caught off guard. Again, from Thunder 7. Jason on Blast says DeSantis Lake 2028. That would be a nice combo. Lynette says, I love Kari Lake, but there's some discussion about whether she's sincere or whether she'll dump Trump or whatever. Kind of the same discussion with DeSantis. Personally, I respect DeSantis enough to believe he's not stupid enough to light his career on fire by trying to primary the president and not disloyal enough to fight his mentor. I know some good people are tired of Trump baggage, which is incredibly stupid given that anyone who fights the swamp will get slimed badly. And Trump is tougher, older, and has far more practical experience than DeSantis does. Good points there, Lynette. Very good points. Miguel says, put Kamala and the Dem posse somewhere. And Miguel was commenting on our morning walk and talk. You know, we were talking about people being at each other's throats on our morning walk and talk. And there were these two dogs that were just like, they wanted to sniff each other, but then they wanted to murder each other. And I said, see, even the animals are outraged about this. So you can see it's infecting everybody. Former LEO says, if the FBI and the DOJ had BDE, there would be a vote of no confidence. And that was over on Locals. I saw a couple others come in on YouTube. Rod Southern says, Trump is the ballistic vest protecting your patriot heart. Love from Western Australia. All the way out through the comments. Shout out to our Australian friends. Good to see you, Rod. Hopefully I got that right. We got Patrick Parker says, since there is no chain of custody or photographic evidence of the location of said documents, can he declare a mistrial? So, you know, it would be something where he would be able to impeach that evidence, right? In the presentation of evidence, they'd say, they'd bring up a government special agent, FBI agent, and he'd say, I was the person who looked in box A21. Okay, how'd you do that? Well, I opened the box, I took the lid off, and I put my gloves on, and I lifted out one document after the other, and I laid them across the table, and I got that all on video, and here it is, right? And then Trump's people would say, but yeah, I know, but you took the document from the box into the van, into the briefcase, into the evidence locker, back out of the evidence, all this crap. And we couldn't see anything that you were doing, and so who knows what you did before you actually end up there and started unpacking it, right? So there's a lot of ways to sort of debate a lot of that. Here is another one from Robute. Says, remember, guys, no conflict of interest with the judge. He was the same prosecutor. Then he quit receiving info, or he actually recused himself from Hillary Clinton's case. Trump sued Hillary, this judge. This is a Photoshop. This is not real. Okay, you can see what I mean to say. This is the judge. This is Ghislaine Maxwell. This is a real photo with J.E., who was on the video. I mean, it was a real photo, but they just added the judge to the image. Okay, but he does have those double stuffed Oreos, baby, and those are the golden ones. Aren't those like vanilla? Those are trash. Terrible judgment to eat something so disgusting. Anyways, Heather's here says, okay, so the comment from Juan Williams came on special report. Trey Gowdy was on the panel too. Yeah. The question was asked, why not release the affidavit and what could be gotten from that information? Trey said as a lawyer, he would always look for more information. He also said he didn't see why they wouldn't release the affidavit because they have a big black marker called redactions. Juan took his turn and replied that he didn't see how people were okay with the affidavit being released because it's designed to protect the person who's supposed to be innocent. So I think he was thinking about Trump being innocent and how it might damage somebody who was innocent if it was released. Okay, well, it sounds like Trump wants it released. So if the innocent party wants it released to help assist in making their claims of innocence, then you release it, right? You release that. And so I don't really know what Juan Williams is talking about. But I think that was it over on locals. I'm going to check one other place to make sure I got everything. Sometimes I miss some stuff. And I think I got all of those. And on YouTube, we got all of those. And shout out to my friends over on Rumble. Anything, Ilda the Hun, Free Appalachian. They're all chatting away over there, along with Fed Cure and others. I saw in the house, I don't know if he's still around, but I saw Zulu was back in the chat over on YouTube. Been a long time since we've seen Zulu. Zulu, I hope you're doing well and welcome back. Even if you're just stopping by, it's nice to see you again. And on locals, Echo House, Phantasmagloria, Jason on Blast. Oh, there is a super chat. Chris Wiseman, there it is. It's on this screen. It says, I found a very interesting ruling from Judicial Watch. They sued NARA for the release of Clinton presidential records. The D.C. Circuit ruled that what is confidential, declassified, or POTUS or personnel record is the sole discretion of POTUS. Judicial Watch versus National Archives. Here, let's pull this up real quick. We'll copy this over here. We'll take a quick look at this, see if we have anything juicy on this. Thank you, Chris, for sending that over. Yeah, so Judicial Watch, actually, they released this for us. Here's what they published. Judicial Watch versus National Archives. On November 2nd, Judicial Watch filed a FOIA request, U.S. District Court, to obtain records related to task force care. Records are archived, cabinet levels, chaired by someone. National Archives admitted in correspondence to Judicial Watch there are all of these records. Okay, so maybe I didn't find exactly what you were looking for. Anyways, the point is, very cool. So thank you for that, Chris. Yeah. And we're going to have a debate about this, about what's classified, not, who can have what, where, and when, and how. And so unless there's more to that, unless this is more than just overdue library books, then, this is not, I think, going to be a good investment, not an investment with a lot of ROI for the Democrats. But we will, of course, continue to follow it, my friends. And I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you for joining our communities and for joining us on our morning walk and talks that look just like this at 20, 30 minutes in the morning, just kind of walking around the neighborhood, just sort of chatting politics. And we're getting some nice comments and some nice discussion taking place before and after the program. And so thank you for joining, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or clicking that join button right next to the subscribe button. We're almost at 2,000 likes. And it would be just incredible if before you got out of here, you click that like button. Thank you also for remembering our law firm, the R&R Law Group. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. We offer free case evaluations, 480-787-0394, and we are really passionate about the work that we do. So thank you for sending people our way. We have an amazing team. We love to help people. I don't want to forget a big shout out to our boy, Marvin. Happy birthday, Marvin. Marvin, of course, helps with a lot of the post-production. All of the clips that you're seeing, a lot of these beautiful thumbnails, all that stuff are thanks to this incredible young man. And we've been working with him. I've been working with him for 3 years. We have an interesting story, and he's just outstanding. And it is his birthday in the Philippines today. So he's in the future. He's living in the future. It's Tuesday over there. So he's waking up very soon to start working on a lot of these clips. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Marvin. Awesome. And so thank you for the work that you do. Hope you're having an amazing birthday and you had an amazing trip. We're really grateful to have you on our team. Thank you so much, Marvin. All right. And we also want to say thank you to our mods in the house. Shout out to K Bean, who is here. Just Cows in the house. Playing hooky, along with Lean, who's always here modding down the fort for us. Didn't see Vienticus around today, but we did see Zulu. We saw Zulu come out. I moved Zulu into the retired column because I thought Zulu was retired. I thought he had sort of moved on or, hated us now or something. But he stopped by. Hopefully Zulu's back. And he's, still welcome to mod anytime. We'll have him anytime, anywhere. Good to see you guys. Thank you for keeping things on track for us. And lastly, but not leastly, we have our Spotlight supporters. So please support these people. Over at qsimple.com, John is over there. He supports us on locals. Chris Romero, David B3, and Dr. EMB all in the house. And they support the work that we do here with a little bit extra love. And so we're grateful for their love and appreciation here on the program by joining at the Spotlight supporter level. But that, my friends, is it for us. We covered just an absolute ton of ground today. And I'm grateful for all your questions, all your comments, all of the brilliant suggestions that you've had for me today. We are going to be back here to do it all again tomorrow. We've got our morning walk and talk. I'm getting a new switcher that should be coming in tomorrow. I'm like a kid in, it's like we're going to Disneyland tomorrow. I've got this new switcher coming in tomorrow. And so I'm going to be playing around with that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But I look forward to seeing you here tomorrow on the next one, because we've got to get all into it again. And it's better when we do it together. So have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you all right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.